Welcome everybody to a new episode of Lean BYTES. Today we have Brandon talking about test automation looks good on you, but why? We do have some external guests, so welcome to everybody externally who's in attendance as well. And we have started recording as well, so just for awareness there. The other piece, as you might have noticed on your calendar, we're leaning into the BYTES pun. So now these are 16 minutes instead of 15 minutes. So just FYI there. But otherwise, I'll just throw it over to Brandon.
Sweet. Well, thanks everybody for joining. As we've, kind of talked about before, Lean BYTES is a way for us internally to kind of talk through, like just small bite-sized chunks of information that we can use within consulting and other people can use within consulting. And over the years, I've gone into a lot of companies and talked a lot about test automation and, why you should have a good test automation practice and what's the value of it. So the goal here today was just to spend a couple of minutes going over kind of how I talk about test automation with folks, and then give everybody else a chance to see if it resonates with them and if it's something that they can use in their world when they talk to companies about test automation. So I've given this quite a few times, so anybody that's been has seen it before, feel free to fill in any blanks that I forget. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here, and then we'll kind of start from there. All right, hopefully everybody can see that. So kind of at the end of the day, why do we even do testing in the first place, right? So really testing is about managing risk, right? Nothing else. It's about managing risk. We all know how software is pretty interconnected, and whenever I change this one thing, I break another thing, and all the kind of things that go along with software development. So I want to start off with kind of a discussion around risk and what are the sources of risk, basically, right? And I've always read this article, I think many of you have read it too, that says the best way to appear smart in meetings is to draw a Venn diagram. So that's how we're going to start today. We're going to start with a Venn diagram. Booyah. Okay. So if we've got a Venn diagram here, what we've got is, I'm going to start, there's the set of knowns, what we know, and there's the set of unknowns, what we don't know. So over on this side, there's things we know that we know. There's things we know we don't know, and there's things we don't know, right? So if you're an astute viewer, you've probably heard this before. You've probably seen the Donald Rumsfeld model. And I don't remember his actual quote, but it's something along these lines, right? About the real risks are in the unknowns. And so if we talk about that, we say like, well, how do we know? And I'll just give a simple example. First off, let's say we know there's a busy intersection, right? And we're walking and we're going to cross the street. We know there's a busy intersection and there's a car coming. Do we walk across the street? Chances are you're going to say no, right? Because there's a car coming. It's a busy street and there's a car coming, so I'm not going to step out in the street. Now over here, we know that it's a busy street, but we don't know if a car is coming. So is it riskier to step out in the street there? Probably, right? Because there could be a car coming, there could not be a car coming. Obviously, we might get into this a little bit later, but if we go and we look both ways before we cross the street, that is us taking that known unknown, getting a little more information and turning it into a known known, so that goes away, right? So now what we've done is we've de-risked that particular crossing the street activity by collecting more information, okay? Now, there's your unknown. So if you don't even know that it's a street, what's the risk of walking out? You don't even know to look both ways, right? You just walk. So you can see as we go to the right on this diagram, right, risk increases. So the farther right we go, risk increases, okay? So that's kind of my little talk on risk, okay? Now, what does this have to do with anything, right? Well, it has to do with a lot when it comes to technology or test automation. If you look at what we do when we build software, is we take a series of unknown unknowns, which become known unknowns in the form of new ideas to add features, to add functionality, to bring new products to market. And we use things like Lean Canvas and a bunch of other tools to de-risk those. And eventually those become software features in our products, right? So we continually keep bringing over ideas, turning them into known knowns, okay? So in that way, my buddy Chris Matz talks about software development and delivery as an information arrival process, right? We're constantly taking information from the right, de-risking it, moving to the left to become known knowns, okay? So now what we're doing here, as we compile this body of evidence that we call a piece of software with all the known knowns, we start talking about testing, right? We've all gone to a test party where a bunch of people, especially testers and then developers, get pulled in, where we have to go in right before a release and we have a test party, right? And what does the test party do? Well, the test party, we have to go through all of these known knowns, every single one of these, get used to. So we make sure there's still a known known. That makes sense? That's what we call regression testing. Okay, so now we know that regression testing is really boring, right? Nobody likes doing regression testing. It's very repetitive, very boring. So, but we go in and we do it anyway. What do people like to do? People like to do more creative stuff, like try to break things, like think about what would happen if somebody put 1 million zeros into this field. Ooh, that's a great idea. Let's move that over to a known unknown. Let's try it. QAs love to say they broke a system, right? But we all know that the system was already broken. They just found it, right? But this is where people like to test. This is what we call exploratory testing. So over here, we're doing exploratory creative testing that if you ask most people, they enjoy testing on this side of the equation much more than they enjoy doing this side of the equation. But computers, on the other hand, they don't like to do creative stuff. They like to do the same old boring, mundane things over and over, like calculate missile trajectories and stuff that they were invented for, right? And so what we're doing here is we want to take and leverage people's creativity and leverage how boring the computers are, right? Because computers are boring and they like doing boring work. So test automation is about allowing our people to be able to align with what they want to do more than what they don't want to do on one aspect, right? Now, here's the other aspect that's interesting. If we go back to our risk conversation, right? And we talk about, I know it's cliche, but here's how much money, here's the risk on this axis. But, you know, people are our most important asset, right? That's what we all say. And, you know, quite frankly, it's also the most expensive asset, right? So it's interesting that when we do a regression test cycle, we put our most expensive asset, our people, and we have them do regression testing, right? So if you think about it, we're spending all this time over here in this side of the equation, right? All this time is spent testing on the lowest risk side of our equation. So we're spending tons of money. Now, these risks over here that are higher risk, they're much more costly to repair or deal with. But you'll notice that we spend most of our money clear over here on low risk items like testing our known knowns. And every person I've ever talked to that I talk about, do you like doing regression testing and testing known knowns? They all say, absolutely not. I want to break stuff, right? So as an organization, when we're doing manual testing and no automated testing, we're putting our most expensive people, our most expensive resource on the lowest risk work. And then what happens is we miss the high risk problems that could cause a data breach or could cause other types of problems, right? So when we start investing in automation and we start writing automated tests for these, the amount of time we need to spend on this side of the curve is dramatically decreased, right? So we're no longer spending people time on this side of the equation. We're spending computer time, which everybody knows computer time is super cheap, right? So what I want to do by implementing a good test automation strategy, what we're really doing is we're reducing the cost of low risk testing by having computers do it and investing in algorithms and computers that can do that. And we're freeing up all of our expensive creative people to have our creative people looking at how do we really break the system, right? Like, what do we really need to manage? What types of things could really happen and cause issues within our organization and our software? So we're going from a good use of human capital, or from a poor use of human capital by over here on this side of the equation, poor use of human capital, and leveraging them in a better way. So by relying on automation in order to do that repetitive task-based work. Does that make sense? That's in a nutshell how I talk through test automation and why it's valuable to clients and peers in all sorts of organizations. So that's what I got for you today. Any questions or comments?
So when you say de-risking, you're not eliminating risk, you're just reducing it to as low as, like you said, the known knowns. You're not eliminating it, you're just saying this we've determined is, customers won't like it. You can't eliminate that risk, but you can say, hey, we've done some research and there's at least an appetite in the market. It's not like we're throwing stakes in front of a beacon.
Yes, you can obviously never fully eliminate the risk, but I think people are much better risk managers than computers, right? So what we're saying is all this manual testing and all these kinds of things that we've been doing that are very repetitive, let's let the computers do that kind of work so that we can free up the people to manage the risk of, making sure our software works, making sure that it's going to hit the market, and play well with the market that we're trying to attack, those kinds of things. But yes, you are absolutely right, Ethan. You're not going to eliminate risk completely. So I got a question here. We got 1 minute left. Or no, I guess we got 2 because we started at 1:45. So who should be doing the test automation work? Testers or developers? Okay, that's a good question. My opinion, both, right? So different testers, have different levels of skills. And, if you have test automation engineers on your team, that's good for, some maybe high level end-to-end testing, some integration testing. I also think it's important that developers do their part in doing automated testing, right? But there are people out there, manual testers, that are born and raised manual testers, And what this does is this letting the developers do that is helping them align the work with what they find joy in, and they can also de-risk the project. So I think there's a role for dev QA or devs doing QA or this automation, right? There's a role for test automation engineers to do automation. And believe it or not, there's a role for manual QA to do a lot more exploratory testing. So I think it's a combination of all three. And your context in your company, it's going to be different depending on how your company's set up, what types of skills you have in the company, those kinds of things. Anything else? Here's somebody in the background.
Oh, we just unmuted on our side, so if there's nothing, I mean, if there's no other questions, we are at time, so. Yeah, thanks for going over that, Brandon. That was awesome. And just a reminder, we will send out a feedback form after this. So for the external people as well, we'll send you an email with feedback form, and we'd appreciate any feedback that you have.
And obviously, if anybody wants to talk more, this was the fast version. I have a much longer, more detailed version. But if anybody wants to talk more, holler at me. So.
You like to talk more?
Weird.
I can't believe you made it in 15 minutes.
There's a lot of detail I skipped and a lot of examples.
Yeah. Great job. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.